sneakerhead, homie, put your hands in the air. Close your eyes and reminisce about your favorite pair. Take a minute to answer, cause the question ain't fair. Probably had 2 or 3 that you love to wear. Probably had 1 or 2 that was multiple pairs. And probably had 1 pair that you never would wear. Yeah, you know what I mean. All you sneakerheads, here we go.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It is Casey, the remix schedule, on time sports talk. This is the Coach's Corner in association with Last Call Sports as well. And yeah, the branches of the brand are growing, and that's exciting. So hopefully you're listening to all three. Uh, the first true episode of Last Call Sports will be out this week. It was out last week. We had some technical difficulties. It's on YouTube, but you couldn't really hear it. But so we're gonna record. We're adjusting. So I think this week's version is definitely gonna be the first real official, good sounding episode of Last Call. But I'm here to talk about the Dallas Mavericks here on this Memorial Day. I normally wait every 2 games, but after last night's game, I just had to get this out. I had to talk about last night's game today for you. So hopefully you enjoy it. Mavericks win 116 to 107. It was a beautiful game if you're a Dallas Mavericks fan. Not so much if you're a Minnesota Timberwolves fan. And let's start at the beginning of the game. We'll work our way through and observations ultimately overall and predictions for game 4 as well. So I really liked how the Mavericks came out offensively in the first quarter. Buckets were coming pretty easy. They, unlike game 2 in the beginning of the game, I didn't like how the Mavericks had to work really hard to get their scoring chances. In game 3, early they came very easy. I mean, uh, Washington was hitting threes early. Derrick Jones Jr. was hitting threes early. Um, and man, it ultimately, it was a great offensive game plan by Jason Kidd and the Dallas Mavericks staff, and it was really an joy to watch. On the other side, defensively, the Mavericks were making it difficult for Minnesota to put the ball in the bucket. It did end up being a somewhat high scoring quarter. I mean, the Mavericks scored 33 points, and you consider a low scoring quarter in today's modern NBA 25 points or less. And Minnesota hit that 28 mark. So ultimately, the projection for the game was going to be over 100 points for both teams, unless one team had a great lockdown defensive quarter. And uh, I don't know if anyone had a lockdown defensive quarter throughout the game, but the Mavericks ultimately come out with the win there. The one big issue I did see with the Mavs early was the turnovers. Just some bad turnovers. I think Kyrie had 3 or 4 in the first quarter again. Um, we got to stop that stuff when it comes to Boston in the finals. I'm predicting it now. The Mavericks going to win the series. I don't think the Timberwolves have enough to come back and pull the ultimate upset in NBA history. I don't know if we'll get to the predictions at the end here. Um, but easy buckets by the other guys early, easy scoring chances. Mavericks took advantage. Go into the second quarter, that kind of flipped. The the Minnesota defense ramped up, and it was kind of a back and forth. There was a little helter skelter in that second quarter, coming up, jacking. Just not great offense overall. I think they kind of both teams got out of themselves and ended up being a 27-24 quarter. Mavericks end up taking um, a lead into the half, and so not much to talk about in the second quarter. It was just an quarter within the game, and but the Mavericks kept their lead. Any type of run the Minnesota Timberwolves might have had that could have been bigger, the Mavericks always had an example, or not an example, sorry, a response to end any potential run. And a strategic thing I just don't understand when it comes to Minnesota Timberwolves is the lack of use of the big pick and roll. When Rudy Gobert and Cat are in there at the same time, they've been really successful with that. They were in game one. Um, and I think I saw him run it once or twice in this game, and it was successful. I don't understand the strategic thinking on the Minnesota bench of not exploiting that more. I did see Conley go to the locker room early in the game. He ended up coming back, so that was really a non-story there. I will say early in the game, that boy Tony Brothers, uh, I don't necessarily. I don't know if that man has it out for the Mavs, but that dude is. If he was a ref in high school where I was at, he would be on my scratch list. I do not want him doing a game. I don't think like he's not intentional, but he's just not. They say the playoffs are about matchups. I think referee styles are about matchups too. And Tony Brothers is not a good matchup style for the Dallas Mavericks. That's just how I view it. I don't agree with a lot of his calls and really the staff in general, but the tech um, on the Minnesota Timberwolves, I don't agree with that either. I thought Tony Brothers was a little sensitive in that situation, and so I think adjust something real quick right here. So ultimately, I really, eh, yeah, I'm not a super fan of the referee or the calls from last night. Anyways, let's move on. After halftime, Mavericks come out. Um, it was kind of a stagnant back and forth third quarter until, holy crikey, Anthony Edwards remembered he was Anthony Edwards, and then just bam, that dunk was incredible on Daniel Gafford. Respect to you, Anthony Edwards. And that changed the complexion of the game up until the end of the game. We'll get to the fourth quarter at Gafford's block, but that woke Minnesota up and said, "Hey, we got to go," and they started to take control of the game. And they end up winning the third quarter, 35-27. And man, it that was a man's play. You know, I remember hearing a shoot around yesterday that Anthony Edwards was like, "Hey, I'm coming out more aggressive than I ever have," and Anthony Edwards ends up with should have had this on point. Ends up with 26 points, his highest point total of the series. You know, but it took him 24 shots to get it. He wasn't an efficient 26. Now he did have 9 assists, 9 rebounds, 2 steals. So he had an overall good game. That's a great game, especially for the regular season. But I think ultimately the Mavericks, you know, they had their answers later on in the game. But what he did in that third quarter was send a message to his team, say we need to go now. And ultimately, it didn't work because they ended up losing the game, but it did change the complexion of that game. And I think that says a lot about the Minnesota Timberwolves that it takes a play like that to get them going. Incredible play. But ultimately, I think that says a lot about your team that you need something a little extra in the Western Conference Finals, like a dunk of that caliber, to get you to start playing that way. And I think that speaks to the youth of the team. And I've said this many times before, especially during the Oklahoma City Thunder videos and podcasts, was young teams don't win in the playoffs. Now, I thought the series was going 7. I was wrong on that. I thought Minnesota's defense would be a little more stout than it's been. And the Kyrie and Luka and these other guys have taken advantage of them. And one of the biggest things they've taken advantage before we get to the fourth quarter, I said it, I've tweeted it, I'm saying it again. Dallas is the new Lob City. No disrespect to Los Angeles. Dallas is the new Lob City. Okay? Start making the shirts, start branding, start trademarking it. It is Lob City now. Big D is Lob City. I'm sorry. It's not a better Lob City than the Clippers version, with Griffin and DeAndre and Chris Paul and those boys. But it is the new Lob City. So kudos to the Dallas staff on recognizing that they can take advantage of this and that you have Lively and Gafford take advantage of that. And hopefully, been praying for Derek Lively, man. Hopefully Derek Lively comes back healthy, took that nasty knee. I'm not saying Cat is dirty in that realm. He knows what he's doing when he's going up for a layup, putting that knee out in front. As basketball players, we've all done that. Because once you get a knee in the chest or a knee somewhere else, you don't necessarily want to jump up and get tested like you have been. So understand what Cat's doing there. Ends up hitting Lively in the nutsack, and I think he got a couple other people, or maybe one or two, uh, with that issue. But the knee to the back of the head was inadvertent. Um, nothing intentional about that. Lively fell in an unfortunate spot where Cat was going for an offensive rebound, I do believe. And so, hopefully Lively comes back because he's a game changer. Like, I was a big fan of Dwight Powell, 4 or 5 years ago. I thought his career trajectory, that what he took advantage of, was pretty incredible. But he's not that guy anymore, and he looks frantic out there. Like, he looks like the energy kid off the bench in high school that doesn't have a lot of skill but runs around, bangs into people, and he'll make a play here and there, and then everyone thinks he's amazing or he's terrible. Either way. And so, um, yeah, it, Dwight Powell doesn't need to be out there, which you kind of saw that adjustment by the Mavs to give Gafford uh, a little gas refill in the later in that game when they went small, and PJ Washington was essentially the center and Luka's the power forward. Interesting strategic change there by J Kidd. Um, I think if you see that and you're in Minnesota, you immediately got to have both bigs in the game for your size. It's slipping my mind if they had that. I do remember Gobert being in there because he basically shoved Derrick Jones Jr. on an offensive rebound, got a putback. I don't know if Cat was in the game during that time period. But if you see if Dallas tends to go to that, I think you need to recognize and go big if you're Minnesota. Now, one strategic thing I did notice about Minnesota, and what I did like what they did defensively is they switched it up. They blitzed Luka on almost every pick and roll, which they kind of got away from in game two, and then they showed some zone, some 2-3 zone. I saw there some 2-3 matchup zone there, and I think Luka hit two long threes against it. He just got catch and shoot threes. I mean, if you're going to run that, you got to kind of adjust that zone to shade towards a certain guy. Just as an example, in the schools I've been in, we run a point matchup zone. It's kind of unlike any other. But there was this kid this year who, a couple games before they played us, he had 50 plus points in a game. And so basically what we did is we adjusted and shaded our zone to him to know where he is at all times. And we're going to let the others beat us. That kid had 3 points against us. And so if you're going to run that 2-3, if you're Minnesota, you got to shade that zone towards the two best players on the court. And if you're going to live with the others beating you, like Washington and Jones and Gafford and Josh Green and J.J. Hardy and that crew, then so be it. But don't let Luka get catch and shoot threes. But I thought it was an interesting wrinkle that Minnesota hadn't shown yet as far as the 2-3 zone. I wonder if they'll go back to that in game four, kind of throwing the kitchen sink at it because you ain't got nothing to lose. You're about to get swept potentially. So Minnesota takes control in the third quarter as far as the flow of the game. I think they do get a little bit of the lead, and then the fourth quarter starts. And, fourth quarter starts, and, you know, interesting decisions, uh, you know, by a couple players like Daniel Gafford had some stupid fouls in the fourth. I think that's why they went small because he got himself in foul trouble. Um, and I think an underrated play. I think this may have been in the third or early in the fourth. But Luka Doncic taking a charge was an awesome play. As a coach, I love seeing charges taken. Luka's not going to get up there and block. I think it was Anthony Edwards coming on the fast break and takes the charge in the chest outside the restricted zone. Incredible play, game changing play. I thought very underestimated. Um, and so, you know, apologize. Mouth got a little dry. So huge play by Luka there, kind of turns the tide. I think it was in the third quarter. It was before the Anthony Edwards dunk. My memory serves me right. But the fourth quarter, Kyrie and Luka took over. Um, they closed out the game and ultimately shut down Minnesota's any attempt they had to come back. You had the Gafford massive block from behind when he gets, I think it was either off of a secondary break or off of a pick and roll where he got behind, but he chased him down, blocked it off the glass, and that kind of sent the message of to back to Dallas like, hey, momentum's in our realm. We're gonna come back the other way. And then a couple possessions later, you get the lob from Luka to Gafford, who just that shut down the building pretty much, and they close it out. I've said two out of the best three players on the floor at all times have been on the Dallas Mavericks in every series this playoff run. Now, next round against Boston potentially, there's a debate there, but I still think you still have two out of the top three. Now, that fourth player is a lot closer with Jaylen Brown than any of the other teams you faced these playoffs. But Boston also hasn't been tested. We'll get into Boston a little later. Uh, once this series is wrapped up, and questions about Minnesota. I have the big and big pick and roll. Why haven't we been seeing it? And they keep a lot of times they keep leaving Rudy Gobert on an island or Cat on an island guarding JJ Hardy, Luka, Kyrie. And I know you have your defensive philosophies, and that's what you got here, what got you here. These guys are putting these bigs in spin cycles. Like it's yes, Luka hit the game winner over Gobert in game two, but these other guys are taking advantage of the matchups, and the big little switch isn't working for Minnesota. So you either got to keep blitzing it or fight under or over a screen, stunt and show if you're the big, and then drop to prevent the lob. I know you're kind of put between a rock and a hard place, but you gotta make an adjustment somewhere if you're Minnesota. So stop leaving your bigs on an island. As a Mavericks fan, please keep doing it. But as a Minnesota, you got to make the adjustment there. And obviously the two stars for Minnesota, they're just not playing up to the level they were before the series. We talked about Anthony Edwards' game this last game. He had 26, but he took 24 shots to get it. He was making plays, but he had some questionable turnovers as well. Didn't play super well, I didn't think. I thought he played like a star, but not a superstar. He played like a great Robin to someone's Batman, and he's supposed to be Batman. That's what I saw from him last night. And then, Cat had a whopping 14 points. He had a double-double, 14-11. That's great if you're Daniel Gafford. It's not great if you're Karl Anthony Towns. Jaden McDaniels had some foul trouble issues, being pretty handsy. He ends up with 15. And Mike Conley Jr. Played 31 minutes, had 16 points, only 4 assists, and Naz Reid, the potential hero of game 2 that really pushed them. He had 14. He had a nasty dunk too, I think, in the fourth quarter or in that third quarter run. Um, he's a great six man. I love his game. I wish he was actually on our team, but ends up, 14 points is kind of where you expect him. The guy who was really getting on my nerves ultimately was Kyle Anderson. That guy can't shoot a jumper to save his life. Kind of a poor man's Ben Simmons, and ends up with 10 points. I think he was 5 for 6 from the field or something, but he just, and I saw Luka guarding him one time, he backs off of him because he knows he wants him to shoot, but he backed up so far, he gave Kyle Anderson the room to get momentum to get into the lane to hit that floater that Kyle Anderson's really good at, in that 15-foot floater range inside the paint. And so, uh, the game ends up going Dallas's way. Dallas takes 3-0 control of the series. This next game's at home. And I'm predicting a Dallas Mavericks win in game 4. I think it's going to be a sweep now. I think Boston sweeps tonight. So I think it's 2 sweeps in the conference finals. I did not have Dallas making it to the finals in my original bracket, but my bracket did change once the Nuggets got busted out by Timberwolves. And at the beginning of the series, I felt like Dallas was the better matchup. I didn't think Dallas was a great matchup for Denver. Or I'm saying Denver was a great matchup for Dallas, I should say. So ultimately, I think Mavs, Boston. I did pick Boston before the playoffs to win the NBA championship. What I'm seeing from Dallas right now, and then I think they still have 2 out of the best 3 players in that series. I'm going Dallas in the finals over Boston now. I'm switching my pick. It sounds like a homer pick. I understand that. But just what I'm seeing out of these 2 teams, Boston has not been tested in the playoffs, as well as ultimately they keep running into teams that are injured or Tyrese Halliburton isn't in the series. They almost lost in overtime and lost a close one. I think a full arsenal for the Dallas Mavericks as long as Lively comes back, which I feel he will, from that neck sprain. I think it's a. I think it's. I think Dallas could win the championship. Honestly, I think this is a great balanced team right now. A really good defensive team. Tatum and Brown are a problem. The other guys on the team are a problem. Drew Holiday is a problem. Drew Holiday versus Kyrie, I think, is an interesting story. Kyrie going back to Boston, where he wanted to go after Cleveland, is obviously intriguing. And, how many people got to eat crow, by the way, on Kyrie Irving? They said this link up with Luka would never work. After missing the playoffs last year, but there were some injuries in that situation. And then, Kyrie he needs a lot of credit in this realm. He's matured. He wants to win. He's a different player than what he was when he went to Boston, than when he went to Brooklyn, and it didn't work out in those scenarios. And he's come here, and I think he's really provided a stable leadership for these guys that look up to him, and it works. But the offensive game works between him and Luka. It's not I go, you go, you go, I go. It's, hey, we're going to take what the defense gives us. You got it. I got it. Whoever gets the points doesn't matter. We just want to win games. And the unselfishness I've seen with the Dallas Mavericks is what I really, really enjoy watching right now. Is they'll throw it to Josh Green. I've seen Luka multiple times tell JJ Hardy, go take Gobert off the dribble. And, that's trusting your teammates and leadership and showing them, hey, this is your time. Go take advantage of it. And then when it's Luka and Kyrie time, the other players don't have an issue with that because they know they've had their chance or they've been given that trust. And that trust is there if a team blitzes or triple teams one of those 2 guys for them to make plays as the other guys on the floor. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup. I suspect that's what it's going to be, Boston, Dallas. And I'm saying Dallas in 7. That's what I'm saying. I think Dallas will actually probably win game 1 and kind of wake Boston up, and then Boston responds. And then I think you may see some trading of games going into game 6 and 7. And ultimately, I'm saying Dallas wins it in 7 on Boston's floor for the 2nd championship in Mavericks history. I know it sounds like a homer pick, but it is what it is. So, game 4 tomorrow, I think it's going to be a sweep. I think Minnesota has thrown everything they can out there, and it's just not enough right now. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this episode up, and I appreciate y'all listening. And had to wear my patriotic gear here for Memorial Day. This is my free as F golf T-shirt. I love this golf shirt with the matching American Eagle, and this one's a little different. You got the headband on this one. Anyways, uh, you know, like I said, appreciate y'all listening, coming all the way, supporting. If you subscribe, like, comment, I'll hit you back wherever it is, and you know, just keep looking to get this growing. And I appreciate y'all to this point. So thank y'all, and yeah, shout out to my normal Mission 22, Tel Valhalla Project, and Camp Hope. So peace. I'm out. Love y'all.